Hey guys, yesterday you would have read about the president and the executive branch. Today we're going to be covering your reading by looking at presidential qualifications, the presidential duties, and the Order of Secession. Also, take a moment to check out your key terms. To start, let's go over the bell ringer. Number 1, which president is your favorite and why? Give some good reasons and real reasons based in fact, not opinion. Number 2, explain what you think the hardest part of being a president of the United States is. Again, explain your answers. Now you can pause the video, answer in comments on Google Classroom, and then resume after you are done. Alright, let's get into it. When George Washington became our first president, Congress thought he should be addressed as His Highness, the President of the United States of America and Protector of the same. Well, many laughed and just began calling him Mr. President instead. The word president comes from 1300s French, meaning a chosen leader of a group of people. For us, this is the head of the executive branch of the government in which he or she would execute or carry out the law. At first, this branch was just the president and vice president, who was the second place loser at that time, but that changed quickly. Now it has evolved dramatically, and maybe even so much that even the founders would probably be adamantly against it. The executive branch is not just the president and VP, but also the 15 departments of the executive branch, such as the State Department, the Department of Labor, the Department of Education, and more. In addition to that, we cannot forget the thousands of agencies, divisions, commissions, and offices that were also created since Washington. Other examples include the CIA, the FDA, or even Space Force. Before today, we won't be covering all of the departments and agencies, or even the scary fourth branch of government, the CIA, FBI, and NSA. That's mostly a joke, by the way. But we will be covering the president. The president has 3 qualifications. Number 1, he or she would have to be native born. Sometimes if I accidentally say he, just forgive me because so far it's been just a he. So that means that to be a native born citizen, you have to be a current citizen that was born here. Number 2, he or she must be at least 35 years of age. For some odd reason, we never even get close to this. And number 3, he or she must be a U.S. resident for 14 years. The president serves for 4 years and can serve a max of 2 terms, even though when our country started there wasn't a limit. That comes later with the 22nd Amendment. However, no president served longer than 2 terms except FDR, who would serve 4. The president is paid $400,000 a year and given a $50,000 allowance, but they also get additional money for travel costs and other things like that. One interesting fact about Donald Trump is that, who is of course a controversial figure, is that he actually donates his money. Most presidents have attended college, and virtually all of them were white men. Most were Christian, many were lawyers, and many served as politicians prior to this at the local, state, or even national level. We have had presidents that have been 42 years old, like Teddy Roosevelt, or 43, like John F. Kennedy, or we've had many that were old, such as Trump, who's 74, or Biden, who is 78. For the vice president, well, all of the qualifications have to be the same since the vice president would have to take office if anything happened. Also remember that the one who took second place to the president historically would become the vice president. But quickly we did change that because it could be tense, and that was changed with the 12th Amendment.
Daddy, this ball is for the dog to play.
The vice president takes over if the president dies or resigns. The vice president takes over if the president dies or resigns or is removed. For most of our history, the vice presidents have had little to do, actually. Their responsibility was basically to wait around as a substitute if something happened to the president. How often has that happened? Well, out of the 46 presidents now that we've had, including Biden, 8 presidents have died. Harrison, Taylor, Harding, and FDR all died, while Garfield, McKinley, Lincoln, and JFK were all assassinated. Now, the vice president doesn't just sit and wait, but he does get other jobs. The big one being to preside over the Senate as the head. But remember from last chapter that this rarely ever happens since they do have what they call the president pro tempore to do that. So the vice president is not a member of the Senate and doesn't get a vote, but he or she Can if there's a tie. What happens often is that the president actually gives vice president different jobs, such as going overseas as a representative to the country or a representative to the president. So their roles are kind of like made up on the spot a little bit. For example, we can remember Trump saying Pence will manage and take care of the COVID pandemic for us. The vice president also gets a salary, and it's about half of the president, and he would also have an allowance and money for other things like staff and travel. One last factoid on VPs is that many times they later become presidents. This has happened 15 times now, where vice presidents of the 46 presidents have became presidents later or immediately because of deaths. Now, what happens if the president and the vice president pass away or resign? Well, we have an entire order of secession planned. First, the 25th Amendment allows the new president that was the vice president to nominate a new vice president in his or her place. But if both leave or pass, the 20th Amendment gives Congress the power to set the order of secession. The Speaker of the House is the first in line, then the President pro tempore, so the head of the Senate, and then by the members of the President's cabinet in order of their creation. So the Secretary of State would be first, and then the Secretary of Defense, and then so on. Now, what happens if they're all taken out? This is a common question my students always ask me. Well, I don't know, and I'm not sure if anybody really knows. Some say the Supreme Court would have to step in and serve, or the Supreme Court would have to step in and figure out what to do to set a precedent. Some say that Congress would just elect a new Speaker of the House from one of its other members. But then the question goes, well, what if those people are taken out? Okay, well then we might have to have special elections to pick all these new people. So I don't really know, but I can take a guess that probably the Supreme Court would have to decide what the Constitution says or assumes, and they would basically set a precedent because it would be new. Now, interestingly enough, 6 times vice presidents have taken the presidency temporarily from the 25th Amendment. One example is from Reagan's surgery, in which Bush would take over for a few days. Bush Jr., the younger one, not the smarter one, was under anesthesia twice while his vice president would fill in as well. Alright, so that's all I have for you today. Remember to comment your answers in the bell ringer. Tomorrow we're going to continue through the presidency by covering the president's role and powers. Thanks for watching, guys. Let me know if you have any questions. Take care.